we can talk about the domestic action. We've got a new manager who's had his first press conference as Man United boss, Ruben Amorim. We'll be talking about that. Who's next for Inter Miami? And what happens after Tata Martino decided he had had enough? And also, Jules Laurent will look at some classic kits from the past. That includes Shaka's. How many X's in the XL were your oversized kits?
Only, one or two. But,
yeah. my size XL.
Semantics at this point.
Donaldson size XL back in the day. But let's start with Ruben Amorim. And he had his first press conference today, Shaq. He speaks like a pro. He speaks like he's been in the role for many, many years. He speaks well. And he says he's not going to be frightened to make the big decisions. What have you made of him since he was announced and confirmed as Man United boss, and what he's had to say, especially today, to the media?
Well, I mean, you can't help but be impressed by Ruben Amorim and how he's kind of handled the transition, and even when he was still sporting boss and this announcement was made, just kind of how he went about his business, both for sporting and in kind of managing the speculation around Manchester United and all that was to come. That's all well and good, but of course the true test comes when the games begin and how he is able to turn Manchester United around. I say that only because, and I hold my hands up, I thought Ten Hag, particularly in that first season, he said all the right things and he got results as well. But as time has now told, he didn't stack up to that early season excitement, certainly that I felt. I'm taking sole responsibility for that. So maybe having been burnt so recently by Ten Hag and that experience, I'm a little bit more cautious with Amorim. Saying that, once again, you have to say that everything about him continues to leave you impressed, leave you hopeful if you're a Manchester United fan.
LME said he's going to change the standards a bit, like I need to change this voice. How does he do that?
I don't know. That was remarkable what you just did there. That's. I think to Shaka's point, there's been a never long need for Manchester United to press the reset button over and over again. But in many ways, Ruben Amorim, and just from everything that I've learned about him, is the kind of manager that is exactly needed for the Red Devils. And I'm not even just talking about it from a tactical perspective. I think that Erik ten Hag alienated a lot of players in that dressing room, and he alienated a lot of the fan base. Ruben Amorim, obviously, he hasn't managed a game yet, but he comes in with a reputation of being a fantastic man manager, somebody that really is going to encourage you to be the very best that you can be. Aside from the fact that he's a really great, smart tactician, he's resilient, his resume proves it over and over again, and I think that's the kind of thing that Man United win. It's no secret, MD, that I've said on this show that I'm a really big fan of his. In fact, even before Unai Emery went to Villa in November 22, I wanted Amorim. That's how much I respect and think of him. And look at what he has done ever since. Here's the key. And this is going to be the biggest obstacle. And he has many, obviously. But it's going to be about what does he do with the existing roster that he has? Because he's not going to have the $760 million that Erik ten Hag spent over the course of 3 summers. He's not going to have that. So he's going to be needed to really not just encourage what he has, right? But also help other players understand that you might be needed in different roles. And that's going to be a big obstacle. But I'm a very, very big fan of his. And for the sake of Manchester United fans, I root for him, specifically in these first 11 matches up to the calendar year.
Yeah, speaking of these first 11 matches, let's take a look at them. And Shaka, in politics, president-elects, prime minister-elects have a to-do list. Just like in football, Ruben Amorim will have a to-do list. He's got a decent fixture list. Yes, the Ipswich game is away, not at home, but that's not a bad start. What is the first thing on his to-do list?
Figure out exactly who his best 11 is and the formation to get the best out of that 11. That's easier said than done, albeit. And here's the challenge for Amorim, and I mean he's right in pointing out incredible manager. That's exactly what Manchester United need. When you look at Manchester United, and as you inevitably go through the squad and try to figure out what's needed or what's highest on that to-do list for the new manager, and you go through the squad, it's not a bad 11 at their best. Onana's a good goalkeeper. He proved that in Serie A. De Ligt is a good defender. He's shown that through his career. Maybe not a Champions League winning defender. Yes, he has some flaws, but he's a whole lot better than anything Manchester United have had for some time. Lisandro Martinez is a very good defender. We could go through Kobe Mainoo, Casemiro, Højlund is a good striker. We know Rashford at his absolute best, but just somehow, as good as this team has shown they can be individually, they've been far too inconsistent, and collectively they simply have not been good enough. So when we start to think about, well, what's Amorim going to do next? Who is going to come through that door come January? You kind of start to second guess. Well, again, I'll speak for myself. I kind of start to second guess myself. Is a striker more important than a midfielder in this circumstance? Does he need another centre back? Because he certainly seems to prefer to play three at the back, and which you saw him do with Sporting, and that's key. And now to the graphic, the first three games: Ipswich, Bodo Glimt, Everton. That's a good start to have. And again, that Ipswich is away. We'll continue to underline that. But that's a good start to have in terms of how you figuring out this team. Because those are three winnable games. They don't have to go and win by 4 and 5-0. That is irrelevant at this point. But if you win those three games, 6 points in the league, if you figure out who your best 11 is, if you figure out your formation, or at least things start taking shape, by the time Arsenal comes around, you have a better idea. And then Forest have proven themselves to be a very good team. And then all of a sudden you got City in the lead after Victoria Pilsen. So it can possibly just start to shape up nicely for Amorim. But again, all this is a hypothetical at this point.
Yeah, let's not forget here. I mean, yes, it's a new manager, and often you see a new manager bounce. But United are where they are in the table because they haven't been good enough. So is it simply a case of getting a new manager in and start winning games? So I went back a couple of years, and I looked at Erik ten Hag's first game in charge of Manchester United. They played Brighton. They lost by 2-1. He played Christian Eriksen as a false nine. He's basically behind the 8 ball after his first game. So the importance LME is understandable to get off to a winning start. But there's no guarantees, because Ipswich are a decent side, and that'll be a statement for them if they could get a result against a new manager. Where would that leave him if United don't win at Portman Road this weekend?
Yeah, it's a really good question, because I think that the context is needed here. Ruben Amorim is an auteur of his formation. We know how stubborn he is about certain responsibilities that his players have to do. And when you enter a Premier League team that's not in the preseason, and not only that, he's entering a Premier League team for the first time in his career. He's entering the likes of Manchester United, right? So all the headlights are on him. He's playing Ipswich away. So you're going to see fragments of his 3-4-3, I think. You're obviously not going to see the complete idea. It's just not going to happen. He's had to wait for many players to come back from international duty, injuries, etc. But what I think we will see, though, is maybe some players in this roster take different responsibilities. And it's going to be really interesting to see what the likes of Diogo Dalot and Mazraoui do in terms of covering space on both sides. Manuel Ugarte, who played under him already for Sporting. And Marcus Rashford as well is going to be interesting to me, because obviously, he prefers to go out wide, but that's not really an Amorim thing. Now, it's not necessarily about the result, like Shaka said. It's not about destroying teams 3-0 or even getting a draw, etc. But it's about, are they learning the process? Having said all that, as Shaka said, those first 3 matches are very doable, and you can definitely get something here. If you can win at Ipswich, and then Bodo Glimt is your first welcoming into Old Trafford, that crowd is going to be energized. If you can get a victory there, then you said it, MD, earlier this week. This is also about momentum. And then momentum builds confidence and vice versa. And now you are facing an Arsenal side on that fourth match, which clearly is going to be the toughest game up to that point for him. And if you can get a result there, whether it's a draw or something, now you're really building the confidence. And now you're building the strength in that roster to say, hey, I really believe in this man. Because this is something that I need to remind every Manchester United fan. Ruben Amorim, one of his biggest strengths is he makes you believe in yourself more so than you have ever thought. Look at Echegaray, for example, somebody that wasn't even getting a look at in lower divisions. And look what he turned. Maybe he can do that with Rasmus Højlund, right? Look at Alejandro Garnacho, a young player that's willing to prove himself. There are so many good examples of where Ruben Amorim can come in here and really make you believe. Now, if everything falls flat at the very beginning, I am more than certain that Ruben Amorim will enter that dressing room, will enter the press conference and say, it's okay, we got this, we'll make it work. And hopefully for the sake of the club, it's going to happen. But just like Shaka said, those first three matches are very doable.
Shaq, does Amorim have to change the culture at the football club?
You would seem so. All evidence points to serious issues culturally within Manchester United, and in fairness, I don't think that's just down to the players. As much as they're the ones who take the field on a match day, they're the ones who come in for a lot of abuse when things don't go right. I think things have been going wrong at the highest levels of the football club for quite some time, and it's trickled down. It takes its toll. So while he is tasked with changing the culture, certainly of the dressing room, and maybe how things are translated on the park, there are other issues within the club that, you know, the hope was Ineos would start to address. Now we'll see exactly. We'll be able to tell if Ineos are addressing some of those higher up cultural issues by the product on the pitch. I think the two go hand in hand. But without question, Amorim has an integral role to play here.